With a small fry.
These guys lined up here, cleaned up from all the terrible lies and corruption that's still in our society. And it's done great work. There's a new way of thinking, and that is that we're not going to tolerate liars ever again.
Yeah.
Every person that has told a lie and has hurt the Canadian people is going to pay.
Hey guys, we'll see you.
All those lies. We're going to put a stop to the lies and the corruption. That's right. We're here because we stand against the lies and corruption.
We're here because we stand against the lies and corruption. Exactly what the show was going to be about today. Regardless, thank you, Lynn Brooks, for sending me that little bit of footage as Pat King arrived at the Ottawa courthouse. It's the provincial courthouse on Elgin Street. I've been there so many times covering the trial of Tamara Leach and Chris Barber and other events. Thank you for your perseverance and when waiting for this verdict. It looks like a 3-month conditional sentence, no jail time, followed by some probation. The Crown was looking for 10 years hard time. So, although I disagreed with the guilty verdict, I think it couldn't have gotten much better than this sentencing today, all things considered. Although, once again, these people should not have been sent to trial in the beginning. This was a political case. These were political prisoners. They should not have been tried for mischief. This is something that happens at a wedding party. I keep saying that. Thank you again, Lynn, for that bit. And I want to show you this as well before we get into some of the other clips here.
If we are in a full-blown tariff war with the U.S., that might be a reason not to go to the polls.
Well, it might be a reason not to go to the polls. So we're getting contradictory signals, as usual, from the Liberals. We have Mark Carney saying, I might like an early election because I think I can win. We have Karina Gould. This is the same woman who wanted to censor all of the material surrounding her inviting a former Waffen-SS soldier to the House of Commons to sit in the visitors gallery. She wanted all of that redacted, gone, censored, completely missing from the parliamentary record. That's called Hansard. She wanted that gone. Remember that? That's why I have no time for Karina Gould. Here she wants to hang on to power. Very interesting. Weird about it. Corruption and lies. Here's the stickers we just got. These would be wonderful additions to your home. Or maybe not your work. I don't know. Depends where you work. No problem where I work. Anyway, boy, I can't tell you, I was waiting for that verdict. I had to file a story with the Post Millennial while I'm trying to get on the air to do this. It's exciting, but I haven't even showed the intro. We'll be right back with more. We need political change. But we also need the resolve to resist. Yes, please like this station. Really appreciate it because it helps us beat the YouTube suppression, which we deal with every day. No, I'm not whining. And it helps us to move forward. We're close to 40,000 subscribers. That's no big deal, I know, but it means a lot to me. We're on our road to 50,000, and then it gets a little easier. It's like a cumulative effect, it's like a snowball effect. So please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Resubscribe if you have to, because YouTube loves to cancel people who have subscribed. Happens all the time. I hear it all the time from my friends Clayton and Natalie Morris at Redacted. It happens to the biggest stations, happens to the smaller ones. And some people never get off the ground because of it. So Got some good stuff for you this morning. Now, a lot of people commented yesterday, how dare you suggest Pierre Poilievre's not for cutting government waste? Hasn't he talked about cutting foreign aid to dictators, and so we can spend it on an Arctic base and we can spend it on Arctic sovereignty? Yeah. And he's also talked about not initiating a new government program unless you cut an old one of equal cost. Good idea. Not enough, though, folks. We need an independent directorate that is going not just to expose the obvious, but to expose those things, those expenses, which we don't even know about. Because believe me, if you look at the federal budget, it's like a quarter of it is almost like black ops. You have to go through the estimates to find out how much money is being wasted on DEI projects and the like. And we need a good investigative team to go after it, to expose the waste and corruption. And then to say, now the ball is in your court, Mr. Poilievre, cut it. That's what has to happen. We need to just go a little further because this is epidemic. Let's have a look at some of these slides here. All right, yes, please. It's my Human Events article. I encourage you to have a look at that, where I talk about why DOGE is being so effective. But global affairs. Look at this. This is a global affairs bureaucrat spent more than $3.3 million on alcohol between January 2019 and May 2024. That's a big bar bill. It's a big bar tab, folks. According to separate access to information records obtained by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. That means the department is spending an average of $51,000 a month on beer, wine, and spirits. The CTF has long criticized Global Affairs Canada spending, including a $8,800 sex toy show in Germany, $1,700 for a lesbian pirates musical, $12,500 for senior citizens in other countries to talk about their sex lives, and a $51,000 red carpet photo exhibit for rock star Bryan Adams. It just never ends, does it? And what the hell? I've got to ask you this. What is Global Affairs doing financing the BBC? Well, of course, it's financing the BBC because it likes things the BBC is doing. This is so incredibly interconnected. So we're funding the BBC, even though the BBC is a crown corporation like the CBC and gets full funding. But no, it needs more money. Of course, the BBC is losing money as much as the CBC is. So Global Affairs is there. Global Affairs is there to provide more money. And it is just incredible. Now, what else have we got here? I have got so much material here. And you look at evidence over the years. This is like what the USAID, which DOGE uncovered. This organization has been spending tens of billions of dollars on worthless projects over the years. And you think we're doing the same in Canada? You bet we are. Yes. And here is just some of it. Look at the money that USAID is pouring into Canadian universities. You see, this is a reciprocal agreement between woke agencies, woke government directories. USAID helps us in Canada. Canada then dispenses more money to other countries and other woke agencies. Look at the money that USAID has brought to Canadian universities. $1 million plus to UBC. Almost $1 million to the governing council of the University of Toronto. You can have a look at that. In fact, it's absolutely shocking what is going on with the government largesse. And what you heard at the Pat King rally this morning. Yeah, waste and corruption. Let's not go through this any more. Let's put an end to this nonsense. It's time to move on. It really is. Yes, and I want to thank the Right Blend for his excellent live streaming this morning. It kept me apprised of how things were going because I obviously couldn't get in this morning in time because I got a problem with my car. I got to do a broadcast. I had to get the story up. And believe me, when you cover an event live, it takes you longer to file the story. But thank you, Right Blend, for the good work you're doing here. Yeah. And once again, it's 3 months. He's got some probation afterwards. That was expected. That's pretty standard stuff. But the Crown wanted 10 years. And so I think this is a bit of an
example of the steel industry. Yeah. So there's a carbon price on steel. To the extent to which that's paid, yes, that does show up in the cost, for example, of an automobile. Mm-hmm. That's
okay, but you acknowledge that the consumer would pay more at some point.
Well, the consumer is already paying more. Yeah. Just to be clear, the consumer is already paying more. These are marginal amounts.
All right. So, quick shift there to Mark Carney again, who's in Scarborough today. Got a call from Pierre Poilievre's office just before going on the air to say that Mark Carney is in Scarborough to make more incredible false claims about how much money he wants to save you. And here's Mark Carney's admitting his carbon tax, although it's a corporate carbon tax, and of course it's also going to be a carbon tariff, which is insanity. It's going to cost you more money than you're already spending. He admitted that on CBC. Of course, did Rosemary Barton hit back with that? No. Gave him a pass. Although she asked a few tough questions, if you watch the whole interview, but don't waste your time. It's about 19 minutes long, and that's the best part right there. But it's necessary to know that we don't want a trade war, we want a secure border, and we can have both. Not having a trade war and having a secure border. In fact, one equates to the other. Here's a great little piece talking about what Canada needs to do. This is my old friend Brian Lilly from my Sun News Dates talking to Steve Bannon, who never looked better.
On anything that comes from a country that doesn't have it. What would the reaction be in Washington to Canada saying, if your climate plan's not good enough, and the American one would not be good?
Now, what they're talking about here, just to clarify, is Mark Carney's carbon tariff. How do you think American corporations or anybody is going to react to find out we've got a what tariff at the border?
Good enough for Mark Carney. What would the reaction be to Canada putting a carbon tariff on every import that we have from you?
I think it would be a complete rethinking here in the country about what our relationship is with Canada. I think that if you did that, you would essentially say that we're a hostile power. I think it would be reviewed by the American people as that. And I think it would be reviewed by people in Washington as that. And I think it would be reviewed by President Trump as that.
Yeah. So guess what's going to happen? Retaliatory tariffs against Canada because of our stupid carbon tariff. How do people even come up with these stupid ideas? Mark Carney, he's being lauded as this economic genius. And like I say, he's Chauncey Gardner, as far as I'm concerned. This is a guy who you load him up with talking points and he spews them out at a nauseatingly slow and boring rate. But that's all he's good for. Interesting stuff happening right now about censorship. Of course, we're still under the gun, potentially, of this Online Harms Act in Canada. That's why we got to get rid of these liberals, because that's the one thing at least Poilievre said he's not going to follow through on the Online Harms Act. They're talking about doing half of it, which I think is completely stupid. I hope he forgets to do that. I hope that's not really the plan. Just get rid of the whole damn piece of legislation. It's toxic. It's dangerous. It's corrosive. It's destructive. And it destroys our freedom of speech. Get rid of it. But J.D. Vance has said some great things. But here's an incredible interview from last Sunday with Marco Rubio, former Florida Senator, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He's on with Margaret Brennan, who had the stupidity to suggest the Holocaust was a result of the weaponization of free speech. How stupid do these liberal woke media people get? Free speech is to blame for the Nazis and the Holocaust, even though it was the Nazis who banned free speech. There was no free speech under the Nazi government. There was simply no free speech. And here's Rubio hitting back.
I want to ask you about what happened in Munich, Germany at the security conference. Vice President Vance gave a speech, and he told U.S. allies that the threat he worries about the most is not Russia. It is not China. He called it the threat from within, and he lectured about what he described as censorship, mainly focusing, though, on including more views from the right. He also met with the leader of a far-right party known as the AfD, which, as you know, is under investigation and monitoring by German intelligence because of extremism. What did all of this accomplish other than irritating our allies?
Why would our allies or anybody be irritated by free speech and by someone giving their opinion? We are, after all, democracies. The Munich Security Conference is largely a conference of democracies in which one of the things that we cherish and value is the ability to speak freely and provide your opinions. And so I think if anyone's angry about his word, they don't have to agree with him, but to be angry about it, I think actually makes his point. I thought it was actually a pretty historic speech, whether you agree with him or not. I think the valid points he's making to Europe is we are concerned that the true values that we share, the values that bind us together with Europe, are things like free speech and democracy and our shared history in winning 2 world wars and defeating Soviet communism and the like. These are the values that we shared in common. And in that Cold War, we fought against things like censorship and oppression and so forth. And when you see backsliding and you raise that, that's a very valid concern. We can't tell them how to run their countries. He simply expressed in a speech his view of it, which a lot of people frankly share. And I thought he said a lot of things in that speech that needed to be said. And honestly, I don't know why anybody would be upset about it. People are allowed, you don't have to agree with someone's speech. I happen to agree with a lot of what he said, but you don't have to agree with someone's speech to at least appreciate the fact they have a right to say it, and that you should listen to it and see whether those criticisms are valid. I assure you, the United States has come under withering criticism on many occasions from many leaders in Europe, and we don't go around throwing temper tantrums about it.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship...
Now you heard that BS. What nonsense. Is there anything going through this woman's head to say something as stupid as that? Free speech was weaponized. The truth of the matter is, folks, the Weimar Republic that she is saying allowed the Nazis to come to power, they were a woke government that suppressed free speech, had censorship, they shut down newspapers, they shut down radio stations, they gagged Hitler. He couldn't speak in many parts of Germany. They did the opposite of weaponizing free speech. They banned free speech, is what the Weimar Republic did, because they didn't want disinformation to be predominant in the country. Disinformation meaning anything they disagreed with. So they banned it. They were a ban-happy government, the Weimar Republic. They did not promote free speech. They did not allow the Nazis to come to power. They were a government that was opposed to free speech, just like journalists like this are opposed to free speech. And at the end of the day, if you don't have free speech in a democracy, you don't have a democracy.
Was specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history. I also think it's wrong. Again, I go back to the point of his speech. Okay, the point of his speech was basically that there is an erosion in free speech and intolerance for opposing points of view within Europe, And that's of concern because that is eroding. That's not an erosion of your military capabilities. That's not an erosion of your economic standing. That's an erosion of the actual values that bind us together in this transatlantic union that everybody talks about. And I think allies and friends and partners that have worked together now for 80 years should be able to speak frankly to one another in open forums. Without being offended, insulted, or upset. And I spoke to foreign ministers from multiple countries throughout Europe. Many of them probably didn't like the speech or didn't agree with it, but they were continuing to engage with us on all sorts of issues that unite us. So again, at the end of the day, I think that people give that is a forum in which you're supposed to be inviting people to give speeches, not basically a chorus where everyone is saying the exact same thing. That's not always going to be the case when it's a collection of democracies where leaders have the right and the privilege to speak their minds in forums such as these.
Yeah, that is dead on. Thank you, Marco, for standing up for free speech, because as I say, this is what this program is all about. It's about free speech. We don't have free speech, we've got nothing. This program goes off the air tomorrow, we don't have free speech. I stop writing for the Post-Millennial tomorrow if we don't have free speech. I stop writing for Human Events tomorrow if we don't have free speech, because we don't have the ability to write. And stop suggesting that it's somehow smart, it's somehow cute, it's somehow apropos to ban free speech because, well, we might have disinformation if we have free speech. And disinformation, of course, is something the government loves to produce. Nobody produces more disinformation, more lies than government, because they want you to think they're doing great things and they don't want you to know about the dumb things they're doing, to be as accurate about it as possible. Let's listen to J.D. Vance for a sec, because this is classic.
Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values, we must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Yes, it is. We need tough talk like this. We've got to roll back all of this nonsense, all of this hate speech legislation that criminalizes, first of all, speech, and ultimately it's going to criminalize thought.
Pat King just arrived.
Yeah, and you have to what is the racist remark or the racist posting? It's in most cases it's what somebody interprets as being racist, and that is the problem. We've got the government interpreting what we say, or what we do, or what we think as being hateful. Get rid of it all. Let's get back to basic free speech. Now, let's get back to how I started this program. It could have ended very badly for Pat King today. And this guy has been through hell with lawfare, just like Tamara Leach and Chris Barber. This could have been a day of hell for him. The prosecution, the Crown, was asking for 10 years in jail. So it looks like he's got a 3-month conditional sentence, which means he's not going to jail, followed by about 9 months or 12 months of probation. I'd have to look it up. I'm just rushing through this morning. But it overall, it's good news. I'm just waiting for his lawyer, Natasha, to contact me with her remarks. And I'm going to include that in the story I'm doing for the Post-Millennial. Please have a look at that. And my latest human event story will be up today, talking about that interview with Marco Rubio and Margaret Brennan, and how incredibly stupid it is to blame free speech for either the Nazis, genocide, or the Holocaust, or any of the evils of the world. Free speech promotes freedom. Dictatorships promote a ban on free speech. That's the primary difference. Let's never forget that. Let's keep fighting for free speech. Let's keep fighting for freedom. And I'll be right back in a minute. Go ahead. Thanks for watching today, folks. We just had some new footage come in, and I'm going to see if we can get that up for you. It's Pat King emerging from the courtroom, so don't go away. I'm just going to talk for a minute here, and I'm going to show you the the footage again that I opened the show with until we get the other footage in line.
Right. With a small fry.
Since I was going up here, cleaned up and all the terrible lies and corruption that's still in our society. And know, done great work. There's a new way of thinking, and that is that we're not going to tolerate liars ever again. And every person that has told a lie and has hurt the Canadian people is going to pay.
Hey guys, we'll see you.
All those lies. We're going to put a stop to the lies and the corruption. That's right. We're here because we stand against the lies and corruption.
And thank you for watching today, folks. Appreciate it. We'll have more about this tomorrow. And I think this is a victory under the circumstances. Keep fighting, keep resolving to resist. And I'll be back again tomorrow at 10 with all the news you need to know. Bye for now.